Hey, Robin, you ready to start? That's showing at 1 o'clock here.
Yes, I also have 1 o'clock. We're ready to start, I think, whenever you are.
Yeah.
Just let me make sure, Ms. Sands, can you, yep, you can hear us. Looks like we're currently streaming. We are currently being recorded to put it later online with the next 3 business days as well. With that, Vice Chair, the floor is yours.
Okay, we'll call to order this meeting of the State Board of Equalization on August 8th, Monday, at the Volunteer Conference Center in the Cordell Hall building in Nashville, Tennessee. And the first item we have here, you're going to note the roll. Is that right, Robin?
Yes, I can take roll.
Yeah. All right, you call the roll. You're going to note the roll. Which one you?
We'll just note the roll.
Okay, all right. Chair detects a quorum is present. Go to item number 2, which is review of the minutes of April 25, 2022. Do you have any comments, questions, et cetera, in regard to the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do you have a second?
Second.
Spurts seconds. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none. Do we need a roll call vote on these matters, or do we're going to do it by voice vote? I guess since everybody's present that we're.
I believe we do have a physical quorum. We could do voice vote, or we can do a roll call vote for those at home as well, if you prefer.
Okay. All right. Well, then call the roll on the motion to approve the minutes.
Ms. Berkshire?
Yes.
Commissioner Jaragano?
Yes.
Secretary Hargett?
Yes.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Littler?
Yes.
We have all ayes.
All right, minutes are approved. Next item is item number 3, review and approval of revised manuals and forms. We've got several of these. Mr. Pope, would you present that?
Yes, on item number 3A, we have some feedback from some external participants. Item number 3A is the approval of updated Greenbelt manuals and forms. So there's 2 items individually for approval. The Greenbelt manual. Emily Bennett in our office has worked hard to make sure we update this manual to reflect some legislative changes we had. We also worked with Mr. Kelsey Jones to incorporate some feedback he had on our prior manual, and those changes are incorporated before you in the version of this Greenbelt manual. We've also updated our Greenbelt application forms. These now print on a standard 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, as well as includes much more informational. We separated the information from the Greenbelt application form onto a separate page. This 8.5 by 11 is theoretically going to be easier to print at home, as well as by separating those instructions, they don't need to be recorded, saving some people recording fees when they complete these applications. So there's 2 individual action items on those. If the board finds them sufficient, a simple motion can pass both.
Okay. Is there any questions or anything about that?
I would like to say I read through all this and they did an excellent job. So well organized and easy to understand. We appreciate that.
Pretty detailed. Sure is. All right. We have a motion to approve these 3
I'll make a
items.
motion to approve.
All right, Ms. Burchett moves. Is there a second? A second, Commissioner Cheragano. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll on the motion to approve all 3 items.
Ms. Burchett?
2 items, excuse me.
Commissioner Jaragano?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Item number 3B is the approval of revised the 2021 tax aggregate report. I believe the Division of Property Assessment found an error in this with some tables that were affected and have resubmitted it for reapproval.
Okay. Any questions or anything in regard to the tax aggregate report? Seeing none, the chair will move approval of the report.
Second.
Second by the comptroller. Seeing no discussion, call the roll on the motion to approve.
Ms. Burchett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jaragano?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Controller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lillard?
Aye. The item is approved. The next item is item 4, review and approval of reappraisal plans.
Yes, I have Mr. Brian Kinsey, the current director of the Division of Property Assessment. I believe he's in this item.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As Mr. Secretary Hope said, I'm Brian Kinsey, Director of Division of Assessment. So when we met with y'all back in April, We presented all the reappraisal plans that we had at that time from the county that had completed reappraisal for year 2022. At that time, 2 counties had not submitted plans. They were working on them and they have now been completed. And that's all that we bring before you today are Chester and Knox County, the Division of Property Assessments has reviewed these plans. We don't have any issues with them. We find them to be complete and all the expected required information is in them. We present these for your consideration.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Kinsey? Okay, seeing none, Chair will move approval of the submitted plans, Chester and Knox counties. Ms. Burchett moves it, seconded. Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Pope, call the roll on the motion to approve.
Ms. Burchett? Commissioner Jaragana?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lilly?
Aye, and that item is approved. Item number 5, Assessment Education Program.
Yes, I also have this as presented by Mr. Brian Kinsey, Director of the Division of Property Assessment.
Okay, Mr. Kinsey.
Good afternoon. Again, we bring before you 2 new recommendations for Tennessee Master Assessor, Margaret Shelton of Shelby County and Tracy Lindsay of Shelby County. Just FYI, Margaret Shelton had actually met all the criteria as of July 1 of last year. We just did not have that information. So this one's kind of a retroactive approval. But the other one, Tracy Lindsay, is a brand new recipient of this certification.
Okay, so that's item 5A on our agenda. Let's go in and do item 5B while we're at it. We'll take them together as action items. Are you presenting that too?
Yes, sir. So item 5B is about incentive compensation to assessors and deputy assessors. Our state law and rules promulgated by this board provide for incentive compensation for assessors or deputy assessors that have met certain criteria, training and certifications. So annually we submit these names for approval, and that's all this is. It's a routine matter we bring to you every year. So we submitted a memo requesting that approval and also submitted all the names by county and the incentive amount that these individuals have earned.
Okay, any questions, Director Kinsey here? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve both items 5A and 5B?
So moved.
Secretary moves it. Is there a second? Second by the comptroller. Seeing no discussion, call the roll on the motion to approve items 5A and 5B.
Ms. Burchett? Commissioner Jaragana? Secretary Hargett? Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lillard?
Aye. All right, those items are approved. Next item is item 6, report of the Director, Division of Property Assessments. This is an informational item.
Again, Mr. Brian Kinsey.
Director.
I believe this is the last time y'all are going to have to see me this afternoon. So again, law requires the Division of Property Assessment to submit an annual report for approval by the State Board of Equalization. So as we do every year at this time, we have submitted our annual report that covers fiscal year July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. As usual, the report contains the basic summary of the different functions of our office. We have multiple departments here in the Nashville office plus field offices around the state. And this summarizes some of those activities, some of our core responsibilities, so forth and so on. Y'all seen the report several times over the years, but if anyone has any questions or concerns about it, I'd certainly be happy to respond to those. Otherwise, I'll just let it stand as submitted.
Any questions, Mr. Kinsey? Thank you, Director, for your help. All right, next item is item 7, which is appointments. Robin, you want to present this?
Correct. You have a memo in your packet on page 220 highlighting those regular members and those that have declined reappointment this year. I'll otherwise refer to Comptroller Mumpower.
All right, any discussion in regard to the proposed appointments?
Move approval of the item.
Motion for approval. Chair will second that. Seeing no questions, Ms. Pope, would you call the motion on the roll to approve item number 7?
Ms. Burchett? Commissioner Jaragana?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett?
Abstain.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lillard?
Aye. All right, that item's approved. Item number 8 is the next item, review of late file public utility exception, tax year 2021. Ms. Pope?
Yes, this item is an appeal from Delivery Logistics Incorporated and C Pepper Logistics for tax year 2020. I believe it's an issue having to deal with the company dissolving. Typically with these appeals, as you'll see later in item 9 as well, appeals are generally referred to administrative law judge for consideration and discussion. Should this appeal lack jurisdiction, it will otherwise be dismissed. If jurisdiction is found, administrative law judge will conduct a value hearing to hear from the parties with regards to the value on these properties. I believe the taxpayer representative has been informed of today's meeting and should be, I believe, joining us telephonically as well as Mr. Greg Moody from the Office of State Assessed Properties in the gallery.
All right. What are our courses of action on this, Mr. Pope?
So typically it'd be referral to an administrative law judge for a contested case hearing.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion on this item, and is the counsel for the taxpayer present electronically or otherwise? Okay. Chair would move to refer this matter to the administrative law judge for a contested case hearing per the recommendation of the executive secretary. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Giordano seconds it. Seeing no further discussion, call the roll on the motion to approve item 8.
Ms. Burchett? Commissioner Giordano?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lillard?
Aye. That item's approved. Item number 9, scheduling of public utility assessments review and certification. Mr. Pope, the executive secretary, you're recognized.
This is an informational item only, simply reiterates portions of the statute that discuss the appeal of publicly assessed properties and how to do that. Typically, they'll refer to the Office of State Assessed Properties for an initial review period, whereby if anyone wants to do an appeal before the board itself, they need to file that. The board will otherwise reconvene on Monday, October 17th at 1 p.m. in the same exact room, as well as we'll plan to stream that meeting virtually as well, where they can file their appeal and otherwise go from there. Typically at that meeting, the board will then refer those appeals to administrative law judge for further consideration.
Okay, so that's an informational item. Are there any questions, Mr. Pope, about it? All right, seeing none, next item is item 10. Elect vice chair pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated section 4-3-5102. It's an action item. Floor is open.
Would nominate current treasurer and current vice chairman treasurer David Lillard to continue serving as the vice chair of this body.
Second.
Secretary, I'll ask that you preside, okay?
Sure. All right. The other nominations? If not, chair would entertain a motion to nomination cease. So moved. Properly moved, properly seconded. Objection, nominations have come to a close. We'll now take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Congratulations, Treasurer Lillard. You have another term as our chairman. Appreciate your willingness to serve. I'll now turn the chair back over to you.
It's a great pleasure to serve with each of you. All right, next item is item number 11, other business. And Jesse Baker of Grace Church of Memphis is asked to be heard by the board regarding an exemption determination. Copy of the initial determinations related to Grace Church of Memphis are included in your packet, pages 299 to 308. Pastor Baker, are you present electronically or in person today?
Sir, I'm present electronically.
Okay. All right, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Treasurer Lillard and members of the board. As you stated, my name is Jesse Baker. I'm a member of Grace Church Memphis. I serve in a role of a building custodian, property manager. Specifically requesting your consideration today to a change to the effective date for an approved tax exempt determination that was made for Grace Church Memphis for a property that we own in the Uptown Memphis area. Long story short, the property was found in late 2019. We reached an agreement with the seller. We were scheduled for closing in early 2020 2020. And as you might imagine, COVID kind of threw a wrench into things. Long story short, we closed in the beginning of May. And then the church offices closed. And so the subsequent tax exemption paperwork was delayed for a period of time. It was finally filed on April 12th of 2021. And you should have the noted tax exempt records there, 179846 and 179849. The previous person who was acting in my stead ran into some issues as far as figuring out exactly what was going on. So he handed the project off to me. I couldn't find essentially those numbers for those tax exemption records. And so I refiled with the state on August 17th of 2021, not realizing that the previous requests were still active and in the system. On August 17th, I talked to Rebecca Alford there in your office and was told that they were in the being processed. Fast forward to January 19th, 2022, I spoke with Kelsey Bridges, kind of explained what we were using the property for, and she told me that a final determination would be made and that I would receive the approved applications in the system. She mentioned since there were 2 sets that she was going to disapprove the April 12th, 2021 applications and approve the August 17th, 2021 applications. Same property, exact same usage, no change other than the person's name at the top was different. I assumed that would be perfectly acceptable and it would have no bearing on our tax basis. Apparently I was incorrect. And so I received approved documentation from the state saying that the exemptions were granted, but the effective date was the August date. And as a result, we were still liable for taxes accrued prior to that period of time. That was the beginning of April of this year. So on May 5th and 6th, I called Ms. Bridges and tried to leave messages for her. May 10th, I called back and actually spoke with her. And she told me at that time that she could change the effective date to the property to be the purchase date of the property given COVID circumstances, and that I should expect to receive that documentation by the end of the week. That was Tuesday, May 10th. Did not hear back from her after that. On the 21st of June, I called and left a message for her. On the 22nd, I called and left additional messages. Sorry, on the 21st, I emailed. On the 22nd of June, I called. On July 5th, I called and found out her phone number had been disconnected, and apparently her employment there at the state board had been, she was no longer working there. I'm not sure why. July 8th, I sent an email, I received an email back in response to an email I sent on July 5th from Mr. Pope, and we began conversing. And on July 11th of 2022, about a month ago, I was informed by Mr. Pope that there was an appeal deadline that was June 30th, 2022. And that when I talked to Ms. Bridges on May 10th, I should have immediately submitted paperwork in response or in order to generate that appeal. I had that conversation with Ms. Bridges, and she told me that I didn't need to provide anything further to effect an appeal to the effective date that was granted. So all that to say, my request today is a reconsideration of the effective date to the date the property was purchased, May 6th of 2020. Because of the delays associated with COVID and then the issues that I've run into conversing with Ms. Bridges and ultimately, I guess, failing to file a paper appeal in a timely manner as a result of miscommunication or ill-informed communication with her. Mr. Pope said that my only way to do so, that he did not have the authority to do so, and my only opportunity was to request to speak to you today. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Baker? Okay, Mr. Pope, what are our options here?
I'm not entirely sure. As Mr. Baker said, I did review his file and his subsequent emails. The board is pretty jurisdictionally restricted with regards to accepting appeals where there is no jurisdiction. There's an attorney general opinion on it, kind of dictating some of those jurisdictional requirements, and that is typically the fear of you cannot waive subject matter jurisdiction for those things. So I'm not really entirely sure what our options are. I don't know what the conversations he had with Ms. Bridges were or involved. I reviewed the file as well and didn't find any basis for otherwise issuing a correction or a change to the determinations he received.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Secretary.
So I need it in plain English. Do we have any authority here?
Not that I'm aware of. I've noted Mr. Baker's request to be heard as we would with any other request to be heard by the board.
You've researched it and fully determined there is no authority to do anything with this request.
As far as I am currently aware.
Okay, well, then I'll just ask if there's any further comment by board members and regard to this matter. It would appear to me too that there would be an issue about the jurisdiction of this board. As you'd have to have a timely filed appeal. And in the absence of that, I don't know jurisdiction or authority we would have over the matter.
So maybe I can ask a question here to clarify, but in the process of requesting a tax exemption from the state of Tennessee, it was my understanding that the State Board of Equalization was the governing authority for said requests. And so I guess I submitted the request to you all for the exemption. The reason why you don't have a written appeal sitting in front of you today is because a State Board of Equalization employee informed me that no such written request was required and that she would handle said appeal. And now she no longer works there. And it sounds to me that the response is essentially, we're sorry, there's nothing we can do. And as a result, Grace Church Memphis is now liable for $25,000 in taxes that otherwise would have been waived if your employee had known their job. And I'm sorry to put so fine a point on it, I guess, but it's kind of like, is that kind of what we're saying, that it's a mistake that was made and that there's nothing they can do about it? And as a result, Grace Church is supposed to write the state of Tennessee a check for $25,000?
Well, I would state that the board's jurisdiction, regardless of what anyone has said, whoever it may be, is based on the statutes of the state and case law that governs that. And in order to have authority over these matters in general terms, we have to have an appeal. I am certainly sympathetic personally to the situation that you've outlined here, Mr. Baker. But if we as a governmental body don't have any authority to do anything about it, then we can't make it up out of whole cloth. I mean,
Do
the
I
only thing
have
the only other thing I can think to do here is to ask counsel for the board to specifically review this issue and be sure our view of this is in fact the case. If there is some method of looking at it, then so be it. But I would doubt there is.
And maybe this is a procedural question then, but if I was to submit 2 new cases for consideration, requesting an effective date of May 6th, 2020, when the property was purchased, does my timeline start over? Are those considered afresh, or am I now in the process of, because you made a previous determination that I failed to meet a deadline, as a result, now I'm bound by said determination?
Yes, Rob. That's Mr. Pope.
Mr. Baker, I may be able to answer that question, at least in part. So you are welcome to always reapply for file a new application for exemption, in which case the application will go through the same review process and you would ultimately get a decision. If it's been previously approved, it seems likely that you would also receive a new approval. Thereby any appeal dates would then trigger again. However, I will caution and say, I don't know what legal basis there would be to otherwise then issue a earlier effective date. But to answer your question about filing a new application, you are free to do so, and you would then have appeal rights from there. However, like I said, I'm not sure what relief that may grant you in this case.
But to be clear, what you're telling me right now is not that my appeal was disapproved, nor that you would not consider a new effective date, but rather that at this point in time, you have no legal basis to do so.
That is my understanding, correct?
Okay, so in the review of the documentation, at no point in time did you give any consideration to whether or not it was a valid request in the first place. You simply looked and said, you failed to meet the review date. I'm not considering your request.
No, I also reviewed the basis of your request to see if there would be any correction. There is some other potential basis for before you perfect an appeal to Chancery Court. There is provision for the board to correct a simple, obvious mistake. I did not spot any mistake in these determinations.
Okay. I see a hand raised by Mr. Scruggs. If you have anything to add to this particular topic, I would love to hear it.
Yes, this is an interesting and perplexing situation. And I believe there could be some extenuating circumstances and extension of deadlines because of COVID, our law firm would be happy to contact Mr. Baker and represent Grace Church pro bono in this matter. And I would just ask the board to continue it to a later date, and we'll coordinate with Mr. Sharp. With
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Pope.
Well, y'all can do that if that's your desire. We've just simply, this is on other business as a discretionary item on our agenda, just to hear a public comment. And Mr. Baker, we appreciate your comment today, and I'm sure you'll follow up.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time and your consideration of the matter.
All right. Thank you. All right. So that concludes the board's regular agenda. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Secretary and Ms. Burchett both second. Call the roll on the motion to adjourn.
Ms. Burchett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jaragano?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Treasurer Lillard?
Aye. It's unanimous, it seems. Have a nice afternoon. Thank you, and thank you to those